Hey, remember that IRS investigation into Hunter Biden and Biden Incorporated?
Oh yeah, how's that going?
Uh,
It's
do we
been
have
such
the
a long time. Are there any updates, Dan?
do we have the attention span for it? I mean, after all that has transpired in Manhattan and in Atlanta, and of course the Robert Hur report on Biden's handling of or mishandling of classified information, where he's not fit to stand trial, but he's fit to run the country. That was the sort of the top line. Well, yeah, Cheryl Atkinson, investigative journalist, her program online, Full Measure, it's a good one. She is helping us prevent that investigation and those whistleblowers, so important to the investigation and our understanding of it, from being memory holed, which, of course, is the D.C. press corps' preference. You remember the IRS whistleblowers, Joe Ziegler, gay American and Democrat.
That's right.
Remember?
Oh yeah, I remember.
He testified to that.
Yep.
Yeah. And Gary Shapley, who was the first to come forward. So the whole point of you're persecuting baby boy Hunter. He had some problems back in the day with sawdust, apparently. Some snorting sawdust. He had a sawdust addiction. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But anyway, this was always about the whole picture, the whole enterprise, the whole, if Fani Willis was giving perspective, one could potentially see a RICO crime syndicate here. But no. It was always about the hillbilly crime family from Wilmington and its patriarch, Joe Biden. So going back to what these IRS investigators discovered and also what they believed to be true, Atkinson asks, this is her question to Joe Ziegler, the case agent on it.
Actually, in both political parties, say things such as there's no evidence tying Joe Biden to Hunter Biden's businesses or any improper activities. When you hear that, what do you think?
I think it's blatantly false. I would wholeheartedly disagree with it.
Mm-hmm. And first Ziegler you're going to hear, then Atkinson, then Shapley on the DOJ blocking their investigation. They believe there were ties. You just heard Ziegler say it. And that's when the justice system had to intercede to make sure these guys didn't pursue justice too far.
We were never allowed to follow those leads that could lead to potential evidence that could move the ball down the hill.
By May of 2020, Biden was steeped in his presidential run against Trump, while Trump's own Justice Department was allegedly throwing up roadblocks to the IRS investigation into the Bidens.
No one in IRS leadership disagreed that there were discrepancies, but they just completely avoided their duties to act autonomously for the IRS, and they just allowed the Department of Justice to do really whatever they wanted, and that really exacerbated this entire issue.
Mm-hmm. And then just again, sort of reconstituting the timeline in your mind, because it's been so long since, frankly, we've even talked about it, and it shouldn't be memory hold. These, and especially when you have whistleblowers coming forward and putting themselves on the line to offer the details that you would never otherwise get. We would never otherwise know if these guys just decided to button their lips and not say anything. The charges recommended, the rest of the timeline, 22 into 23.
We ended up recommending the felony and misdemeanor tax charges in February of 2022. February of 2022, it now goes from IRS to DOJ as a recommended prosecution.
But they say they fought more obstruction. The Department of Justice would only allow charges if federal prosecutors located in Washington, D.C. and California, where the alleged crimes occurred, agreed to go along.
So I came to find out that the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office not only said no to partnering or no to bringing or helping us in bringing the charges, but they had also said that we don't think you have a case to bring it here in D.C. California had also said no to bringing charges in their district. So now we have D.C. saying no, California saying no.
It's relatively unusual to be told no once you bring a case and write a report for charges.
Correct. So we find out that California says no, and then May 15th, 2023 happens, and both Gary and I are removed from the investigation.
Who told you guys you were off the case?
The special agent in charge of the Washington, D.C. field office told us.
Willful blindness, and those who won't be dutifully, willfully blind have to be removed. And then, of course, we know the rest of this, too. I mean, there's nothing new here, but it's important to refresh recollections. As I said, the David Weiss, special prosecutor, tries to, U.S. Attorney for Delaware tries to strike this unholy plea bargain that is rejected. And now we're still in the proceedings of prosecuting Hunter with Jamie Raskin and the rest of the professional purveyors of propaganda on the Hill, continuing their picking on a young man, not young, with some substance abuse problems this has nothing to do and never involved Joe Biden, despite all the testimony from Hunter Biden business partners, former Hunter Biden business partners like Archer and Bobulinski, that Joe Biden was very much aware and very much involved and very much benefiting. Okay. Kevin Brock is former assistant director of intel for the FBI, former principal deputy director of the National Counterterrorism Center as well. Kevin, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning, Dan, Amy. How are you?
Good. If you were the director of the FBI, if you were Christopher Wray, or if you were the director of the IRS, which has essentially similar investigative powers within their space, what would you do after listening to those whistleblowers and watching everything that has come to pass over the last few years?
Well, my first day in office.
In this case. Yeah, just in the Biden case. Yeah.
Yeah. My first day as director, I would get all the information that's available regarding the case and fulfill a promise that I would have made during my confirmation hearing to make it all transparent, because this has to stop. I'm going to let you in on a little secret here, a little inside baseball. The Justice Department is treating Democrats and liberals differently than they treat Republicans and conservatives. Am I breaking any news there?
No, that's sort of been observably true, although, of course, you're shamed for saying it. Maybe with your pedigree, there'll be less of an ability to do that. But yes, no, I appreciate it.
No, it's abundantly clear right now. And the other secret is that to pursue a case against Joe Biden and his family is readily available. The predication for such a case exists. You don't need an Alexander Smirnoff making wild accusations of a $5 million payoff to make this case. You don't even need whistleblowers to make this case. Just what we know in the public domain is enough for a man off the street to bring a case to a grand jury and probably get an indictment for at least influence peddling. If there was any kind of a aggressive investigation into the money structuring that Congress has unveiled or been able to discern through their subpoenas, there should be a case for money laundering that could be brought. You don't have grandchildren funding their grandfather through myriad bank accounts spread out all over the place. So prima facie, there's a strong case there. If 10% of the energy that's gone into prosecuting Donald Trump in New York and Atlanta were applied to this case, we'd have had an indictment already.
Since you mentioned Alexander Smirnov, this FBI informant that made the allegation that the big guy, that would be Joe Biden, and Hunter were bribed by the oligarch in control of Burisma. He's been indicted for perjury. The argument is that he made that up. And so now you have Democrats running to CNN and MSNBC to say, House Republicans are colluding with the Russians. They've stood up this phony informant with phony allegations, and it's more evidence that Trump is a Manchurian candidate, and so on and so forth. Well, wait a second. If he did perjure himself, I don't know. But if he did, he was the FBI's asset for the last decade.
Yeah.
So how is that House Republicans or Donald Trump?
The House Republicans, frankly, and you may not agree with me on this, but they have nobody to blame but themselves for this debacle.
Okay.
They're the ones that insisted on getting the raw reporting of Smirnov alleging $5 million payments to the Bidens before that information had been vetted. Let me put it this way. They wanted the initial report. We don't know how much it had been vetted after that because the information was provided in 2020. And they wanted that information so they could take it and run with it and point fingers and say, look, there's fire behind the smoke and everything else. This was raw reporting. This, in the FBI, is taking information without checking it out. Subsequently, I would believe that the Bureau probably did their due diligence in vetting to find out whether there was anything behind these allegations. On their face, they seem spectacular, so that they should have received it with some doubt.
But wait a second. Can I just stop you there? Because as you say, this was the 1023 that was released is from the form is from 2020. So,
yeah.
So an allegation that explosive, as you say, why wasn't that vetted, in real time? And then some sort of notation made or some sort of follow-up report to say this is credible or this isn't credible. Why would you have to wait 4 years till House Republicans unearth it before you would have the FBI vet the credibility of it?
We don't know whether that was done, and if it was done, that wasn't requested by Congress. They just wanted the raw reporting. They didn't want any follow-up documentation on whether the information was credible or not. They just wanted the raw reporting. And
do you think the FBI set House Republicans up on this? Because if say I want this 1023 from this FBI confidential informant, and you say, okay, well, here it is, but I know there's additional reporting saying this is not a credible. We've determined this isn't a credible allegation. I'm just going to hold that back to see if Republicans trip over themselves, like you say.
I would be surprised at that. Here's how I would characterize it. And in fairness to Christopher Wray, and I've criticized him on other issues, but on this issue, he said, you really don't want this report. I'm not going to release it as raw reporting. If it's false, it's damaging to the reputations of the people that are being accused. That's the way the FBI rolls with all source reporting. That's why it's never disclosed, because 50% of the time it's not accurate. That's the nature of dealing with confidential sources. Sometimes they're spectacularly accurate. Sometimes they're full of BS with a capital B and a capital S.
Right.
Well, then how is Smirnov colluding with the Russians?
The accusations there is that they've documented some contacts between Smirnov and Russian operatives over the years, and his name is Smirnov. There's no doubt that that's probably the case. That's probably what made him interesting and valuable on other issues inside the FBI or the advancement of other cases. But just to get back to Dan's question,
Right.
I don't know if it's a setup, but they reluctantly let the Republicans look at the document. I don't think they ever did turn it over completely. And I think they probably expressed all the caveats. Look, this is unvetted information. And whether or not they told them at the time, we have other information that knocks this down. I don't know. But there was an eagerness, certainly, on the Republican side to take that information and run with it.
Well, if what you're saying turns to check out, then yeah, you're right. I'm happy to criticize Republicans for being slipshod and
They wanted this so
less
bad.
less than judicious in terms of the pace of these things. the point is not wanting it. The point is it still goes back to, though, this other matter, especially since this has been a bit of a pattern with unreliable confidential informants. And I suppose that to some extent that's just comes with the business of
the territory.
Flipping people. But I mean, but for an extended period of time, I mean, at some point, if you have a confidential informant that you don't believe is credible, then why are you keeping them around, number one? And then number two, now put this in the context of the other CIs that were hanging around for a long time, which, of course, the Democrats did the same thing on, and maybe for even more nefarious reasons. I'm thinking about Christopher Steele. I'm thinking about Danchenko. I'm thinking about Halper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the only thing I can say is that one of the hardest roles for an FBI agent is developing and managing sources, because of the dynamic of the fact that sometimes they provide excellent information that makes cases and evidence that puts people in jail, while at the same time, very same sources giving you rabbit holes and disinformation and lies that you have to manage and have to navigate. So sometimes, yes, it gets to a point where you jettison a source and say this isn't worth this juice isn't worth the squeeze, but other times you just have to manage it.
Yeah, okay. That's fair. I mean, something else, though, too, I wanted to get your reaction to, of course, the reporting from Michael Schellenberger and Matt Taibbi last week that, and this necessarily implicates the FBI, and in addition to perhaps more mainly John Brennan at CIA, that the Russian collusion investigation was not something that was happened upon because George Papadopoulos made an offhanded comment to Stephen Halper and an Australian diplomat and talked to Stephen Halper, and then this thing. And no, it was orchestrated from the outset. It was John Brennan and ostensibly others that initiated this right from the beginning and pressed it for as long as they could into Trump's presidency.
I read that. I would love to see their sourcing on that. I'm not discounting it, but I've also heard other explanations similar to that really in the end didn't hold water. There's no doubt that Brennan and Clapper and others were vehemently anti-Trump and lining up efforts to disrupt his campaign at that time, which the Comey FBI willingly participated in. I have no doubt about that, but I don't know, and I'm not sure I can comment accurately on the depth of those accusations by Taibbi.
When we, talk to you, we always like to do a stop, look, and listen with respect to your former employer, the FBI. So, where do things stand with Christopher Wray and the FBI in your mind now? With on all the various issues, including, frankly, border security, since Christopher Wray was able to muster the words that lawlessness at the border is a national security issue.
Yeah, not saying enough. And I was one of the signers of that letter that we sent to Congress. I think you had Jody on last week to talk about that, Jody Weiss. And we have grave concerns about the surge of single military-age males from hostile regions and countries coming into this country. Not enough is being said about that by the FBI, by the DHS, and even Congress, frankly. This is a huge, gaping threat to the nation right now, a clear and present danger, and we're not paying enough attention. And if the FBI director, whoever that is, needs to step up and make noise about it. More noise than being made right now.
Kevin Brock, former Assistant Director of Intel for the FBI, former Principal Deputy Director of the National Counterterrorism Center as well. Kevin, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Amy Jacobson here for Willows Academy. You've heard us talk about Willows Academy in Des Plaines on the air before, but there's nothing better than hearing from a current parent about their experience.
As a dad with